Hey, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Fundraising BIDness Talk. My name is Patrick Cyber. I'm the owner and lead auctioneer here at G Events LLC, based in beautiful Beaverton, Oregon, and I'm so happy you could join us today. Hey, each week on Wednesdays, we get together and we just chat about what's happening in the fundraising, auction business and golf tournament business. It's something that I'm passionate about. I've been involved in for now 30 some odd years. And we like to chat about what's current events and what kind of things we're seeing working and not working in the market. And so we just chat away here. I want to make sure that as you join the show today, please be sure to say hello and let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate. Please feel free to ask questions in the comment box. I will be able to see them here and we'll be quick to try to respond to you. I don't even care if they're off topic that we're on today. Just drop us a line, say hello, let us know you're tuning in, and any questions that you may have. I'm coming in a little hot today, hot in a good way. I just got done doing an event. Yes, it is noon on the West Coast, but we did a breakfast event this morning. It's an event we've done now several years for Portland Youth Philharmonic, the PYP group. And it's a wonderful, it's an unbelievable event. They call it Meet the Musicians. And they bring in several, one of their orchestras, Camerata, played a beautiful piece. And then they had a lovely winds ensemble play today. Quartet was absolutely fabulous. And then we do a paddle race and we raise money, and it's been a lot of fun. And what was special about today's event was that it was literally 2 years ago. We were planning to do this event in person on March 11th at the Multnomah Athletic Club, downtown Portland, Oregon. And I got a call on Monday night, the 9th, and said we were going to live stream the event, that we weren't going to get together. And 2 years later, here we are, right? And we did their event virtual that first year. I think my friends at the AV department tell us we did the first one in this market, first virtual fundraising event. And in talking to my peers, I think that's probably the case around the country. There was very few prior to that. And this was our first one. And wow, what a journey we've been on since then. So it was so cool. We did their event 100% virtual a year ago in the studio. And today we did it up at the Oregon Forestry Center. We had a lovely group of about 140 folks, probably 25 young musicians, incredibly talented young musicians and supporters. And then we also live streamed the event to their audience around the country. And it was just a fabulous event, raised a lot of money. And I'm always impressed and inspired when I see these young people at Portland Youth Philharmonic and their commitment to their craft. And then to recognize that it's a fundraiser like what we did this morning that allows so many of them to pursue their passion. Many of them didn't know it was a passion before they got introduced to music, and many of them didn't have the resources for the private lessons or maybe the equipment or to be a part of an organization like PYP. But the people in that room today and those organizations and individuals and families who gave so freely of their heart and their resources today make that possible. And the entire time I was watching these young musicians, I was just inspired. It was just awesome. And it really made me proud of what we do as an organization and as what we do as a company. And to see that evolution from a group that literally 3 years ago, this group, I got called in to support them, to work with them because they were doing what's called an envelope ask. And this is a format where folks come together, they hear a program, they learn about an organization, and then they're instructed to make a donation in the envelopes on their table. And if they, feel so moved, they would grab those envelopes and they they'd feel whatever they felt, and they would make a donation using their credit cards or check or maybe even cash, right? And this is a group, interestingly enough, those of us, and then this show is, we're talking to nonprofit organizations and fundraisers around the country, and we're talking to fellow auctioneers, so when I say an envelope ask, we all know that in the auction industry that we're going to get better results. We're going to increase their revenues if we use bid paddles. If I ask for people to be recognized in the room by their bid number for their contributions, we're going to get a lot better results. And it was funny, it was about over 3 years ago now, that our good friend Carol Smith, who's a passionate supporter of the arts here in the community, had asked me. I knew Carol from some other stuff, and she said, "Patrick, you got to talk to this group. I think they're leaving money on the table. They're doing this envelope ask and blah 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 blah." And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to talk to them." And I went to a committee meeting, and people were very passionate, as I like to say, on their opinions. I would say there was half the room that was passionate about continuing the envelope appeal, and the other half was passionate about raising more money using bid paddles. And it's funny to me that we took that group and did the paddle that first year, and raised about 40% more than they had, 50% more than they had in their old envelope format. And then literally a year later, this group, who was used to what I would call old school, the envelope ask, they went from envelopes to paddles. And the next year we were live streaming them around the United States. And that morning, that first show, I'll never forget it. She called me. Noreen, the executive director, is a lovely person and wonderful leader of that organization. She called and she said, "Hey, Patrick, we can't get together. We're going to live stream this event." And I said, "Okay, great." I said, "What does that mean, by the way? And what do we do?" And she goes, "Well, I don't really know, but we need your help." And so I spent the next day over at their office, and we rewrote the whole show. The show had been put to bed the week before. We had all our scripts. We knew everything was done. And I went down and we started, and I said, one of my first questions to Noreen was, how do people know how to tune into this event on YouTube, right? It was just kind of confusing to me. I couldn't imagine. And she said, "Well, we emailed everybody that we had RSVPs from." And I said, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." And then this light went on, and I said, "What's the biggest email list that we have here in the building?" And she said, "I don't know. Why do you ask?" And I said, "Well, it's wonderful that we've gotten the word out to the people that were going to be with us in the room. And those are all the people that committed to be at the event. But my question is that there's probably a list that's bigger that we would have never invited to join us tomorrow for this event, because maybe they live in different parts of the country. Maybe they haven't been big donors. We were limited in our number of seats in the ballroom." And so, she goes, "Gosh, Patrick, our newsletter mail list is 4,500. And I said, "Let's send that same notification that we're going to do this live stream tomorrow to that list, and let's see what happens." Right. And so we did. And ironically, the next morning, now this is fascinating to me because this is 7:30 in the morning on the West Coast, right? We send this note the night before. 7:30 in the morning on the West Coast, we're going to do this live stream. And I took a donation that day, folks, for $500 from an alum of the program who was living in Boston, Massachusetts, and had got that email and felt so compelled, tuned in, watched our live stream, made a contribution, and had the organization had pretty much lost touch with that individual. And the lights came on, right? And it was amazing, the journey we've been on the last couple of years. It's just fascinating stuff to watch, and people all over the country participating in events and supporting their favorite nonprofits. And speaking of supporting, my buddy Tim Stewart tuning in today from down in Canby. Who knows where Tim is today, but he lives in Canby, Oregon, with his lovely wife Jill Marie Stewart Wiles, and a wonderful couple of auctioneer family there. In fact, both daughters, Ava and Lily, have both been auction school. And Tim focuses a lot on not only the fundraising auction business, but primarily really strong in the real estate auction business. So, Tim, thanks for tuning in as always, buddy, and I appreciate it. And then also, hey, I see some other folks are joining us now. Be sure to say hello. Tell us hello in the chat box. Let us know you're tuning in. Love to say hello back. And if you have any questions today as we go along, would love to answer those too. So feel free to fire them up. And I was reminiscing because of our experience this morning with a group that we had literally, taken from an envelope appeal to paddle raise to live stream to today. So you're probably wondering, what'd you do today? Well, we actually did a combination. We did, what is commonly known as a hybrid, where we had 140 people with us in the room up at the Oregon Forestry Center. And then we live streamed it to a national audience. And we actually took donations and had viewers in Charleston, South Carolina, up and down the eastern seaboard. And then we also had folks that tuned in from throughout our state, and even some people who live locally who tuned in that didn't necessarily want to get up and get dressed and get to the forestry center by 7:30 this morning. So, that's what I love about our new formats. And people ask me all the time, what's hybrid look like? And I said, you know what? Hybrid is really simple to me. It's taking the best practices of our gathering format that we used pre-COVID and combining that with the best practices that we learned in our virtual formats and coming up with a third format. And that format's unique. It's not the same. It's unique to your organization. It's, not all of those best practices are best practices for your group. Every group is different, right? But we're learning really quickly that there are some incredible power in combining those two formats. And the results are amazing. And I think it's helping us reach a bigger audience, which is great. I think our results are more than just the actual bottom line cash income. I think they are we growing some potential donors down the road? Are we an evangelist, as my buddy Dee Dee Kiesel? I was on the phone with her earlier down in the Bay Area, and Dee Dee was saying, well, yeah, we're evangelists, Patrick, as auctioneers. And I was like, that's a good point. I've never thought of myself as an evangelist. And I guess, because we live stream today, maybe I could quasi call myself a TV evangelist. I don't know, but please don't repeat that. Anyhow, but it's right, and we're growing donors, and people come back and they learn about these organizations. So fabulous, fabulous stuff. And I'm always trying to share on our program here with things that I'm seeing is working. And so today's format that we used was fantastic. Another reach out to our good buddies at the AV department. John Hasty was there, Steve Dowsett, Andy, and Javon, and we had an awesome. We had a crew there with us today, and they did a great job streaming the event. Let's talk about that a little bit, because it was actually kind of an interesting format, because we had a program, but we were also going to serve breakfast, right? And so one of the things that I was sensitive to in working on the Run a Show with our buddy Matthew over at PYP was, we were doing the walkthrough a few weeks ago, and he was running through the Run a Show, and he said, hey, we're going to da-da-da-da, and then we're going to break for breakfast, and this, the culinary team is going to bring in, it's a plated, eggs and bacon type of deal, right? And I said, well, what are the live streamers going to watch then? And John Hasty from the AV department looked over at me, and I could see the lights turning. And I said, hey, John, is there somewhere in this room that it wouldn't be too difficult to get another camera? And is there an opportunity for Matthew? Is there an opportunity for us to take a couple of the musicians and maybe do kind of a one-on-one interview, or maybe an alumni of the program who's in the room with us, and so that the people on the live stream didn't have to watch people getting served breakfast and felt like they were left out. So we said, yeah, let's do that. So we found a kind of a little separate meeting room right off the main ballroom that we were at there at the Forestry Center. And then we did a couple of interviews when the service staff was providing everybody with their meals. We cut right over to that room, and I was standing there one-on-one and got to introduce two of the musicians actually. And it was ironic, I got to say. Maggie is the young bassist that I interviewed this morning, one of the young bassists I interviewed today. And she's a phenomenal, incredibly gifted musician, but an even better human being. She's just I'm always in awe every time I get to visit with her. But ironically enough, she was one of the musicians who participated in that first live stream, and I interviewed her on that show. And so to interview her 2 years later on today's show was actually really cool. And I have to share with you, she made a comment. I said, Maggie, last time we were together, this whole live streaming deal was brand new, and da da da. What have you been doing for 2 years? And she goes, she went, oh, well, I've been practicing a lot. I said, yeah, of course you are. That's why you're so talented as a musician. And then she says, I've been giving porch concerts. And I said, porch concerts? What? Tell me about that. And she goes, I found, when we were locked down at home, it was kind of nice in the afternoons and the evenings to go sit out on our front porch, and I would play my bass, and people would gather in our yard. And my brothers and sisters, she has 3 siblings, I believe, and they're all 3 talented musicians, younger. Maggie's the oldest at 15, by the way, and she has 3 younger siblings, and they all came out and they would perform on their porch. And I thought to myself, in today's world, as we look around, and there's so much disappointment, terrible things, and atrocities happening. It was so refreshing and so inspiring to hear Maggie just say, yeah, I did a bunch of porch concerts. Like, how awesome is that? So what a great show, but what a great concept, right? So, share it with our audience today as you're laying out your run a show for your next level event, your next fundraising event, and you're going to incorporate an in-person gathering and combine it with a live stream. Maybe think about it. There's a food service time that you're going to, nobody on the live stream wants to watch your audience in person get served steak dinners or, pour wine, or, it's just, that's not good TV, right? Take a moment and use it as an opportunity to promote the nonprofit and promote your mission. Interview a couple of beneficiaries, interview some board members, interview some donors that are supporting your cause. That shows that engagement and shows that people are supporting your organization. So just a tidbit and fun stuff. But our buddies over at the AV department, they did a great job with it today. As always, they did that first one 2 years ago. I think Todd Campbell and the whole gang over there, they've probably done 500 or 600 live streams since then of fundraising events and everything else, and they're just tremendous to work with. So big shout out to my buddies over at the AV department. And then let's talk about what I kind of tickled everybody with. I'm already 18 minutes into the show and I haven't got to the main topic today, but I did an event last week, Friday night, for our good buddies over at Hope Chinese Charter School. And, I find that they were in a unique situation, similar to what I see a lot of groups in, right? Because here in Oregon, last week, we were told that I know it's a little later than other parts of the country, but just last week, they removed all the mask mandates here in Oregon. And so, many folks have scheduled their events 6 months ago, a year ago, based on what they hoped the environment would be, based on, what the mandates were at that moment. And many chose to do virtual events, which is fantastic. I think it's a great way. And maybe it's still the best way for that organization. But many groups, made that decision a while back. And now they're hearing from a portion of their community, their supporters, that, hey, we want to get back together, right? And, if you're in the event business, that's not easy. To all of a sudden change venues, to all of a sudden, sell tickets, to all of a sudden do all these different things. And so we did something last week with Hope Chinese Charter School that I think is something we definitely want to share with our audience today, and that we want to encourage in the future, because it was a really great response. And I think people really enjoyed it. Their community embraced it and thought it was a lot of fun. So I want to share with it. I'm going to call it a watch party, right? I think that many of us have, since this whole thing started 2 years ago, we heard the term house parties, where in many cases we encouraged folks who maybe hosted a table in the past or maybe were very socially oriented. They would invite people into their personal homes, and with the intent that everybody would watch the virtual and that they would, gather some enthusiasm and have some type of social interaction. Uh, the house party concept, I'm not opposed to it, but we saw really mixed results with that over the last couple of years. In many cases, we found that maybe the homeowner was technically challenged, or it wasn't really set up so much for technology that it was difficult to have a central gathering point with one central screen or even multiple screens where people could watch maybe on the big screen TVs. Maybe they couldn't quite figure out the technology. The other thing we saw a lot was that the event became really social, and all of a sudden they woke up, or not woke up, but they looked up at their watches and found out that the event was already over and they had never turned it on. Or maybe the group had kind of broken into smaller cliques, right? I remember getting a note from my good buddy Josh, who reached out to me after a virtual event I did for one of his nonprofits, and he was at a house party, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, great job tonight. I hear it was awesome. Sorry I missed it." And I responded, "What do you mean missed it? I thought you were at so-and-so's house." And he goes, "We were, but all the guys got to gathering outside on the patio because the weather's so good, and our wives were inside, and I never saw a thing," right? And it kind of triggered to me, wow, I'm not house parties kind of hit and miss. Some work, some don't. Some people don't want to host people in their house. Some people, aren't comfortable with that. Some people aren't comfortable attending a house party, right? Lots of different things working there. I also think there's some politics, some dynamics there. I have the picture of the 6-year-old that doesn't get invited to his classmate's birthday party. I mean, homes are only so big. You got a really limited invite list. I don't know. I'm not convinced that necessarily. So I've really struggled with that concept. And then it clicked with me here a few weeks back, maybe a couple of months ago, where I was listening to our friends at Hope, and I thought, I knew that our buddies on the committee, Mariana is on the committee. Mariana and her husband own a tap room, which is here in Oregon. I don't know if they're everywhere in the country. I suspect they are, but they're I don't want to call them a tavern, but I would say that they're a establishment that has a significant number of beer taps, and you can go there to enjoy the beverages and sit in the tap room and enjoy it, or you can have them fill your growler, a large container, 64, 32, whatever the ounces are, and they'll fill it with these specialty brews, and it's a fun atmosphere. And I knew they had started this venue, and I knew that it was a very welcome They don't serve food there, which was interesting to me. They don't serve food there, but you can bring food in and you can sit around and you can, have your food and then have a cold beverage and, And they have screens and they watch sporting events there. And it's just a really cool place. And I thought to myself, wow, what if we organized a watch party at their tap room? And you didn't have to buy a ticket to go to it. And you didn't have to, you didn't have to guarantee a rental of the space. The event was on a Friday night, right? Pretty busy night. They had an area that they could designate for the Hope Chinese Charter Community, charter school community, so parents and whatnot could come. Ironically, the tap room, they could actually bring kids up until 10 o'clock, which our show was over at 9 or 8:15. So that was perfect, right? And it was low maintenance, low cost. And the tap room loved it. Mariana and Brian, her husband, loved having, their school community come to their place, experience it. They bought, people bought beers. They brought in their own food. They went to the local restaurants, brought the food over. just a really cool atmosphere. And then what we did was we designated one of the large screen projection TVs, plugged in a computer, and Brian brought up the broadcast right off the Octria website, which is their auction website. You hear me talk about it all the time here on the show. Octria.com, my favorite auction software for benefit auctions, and they put it up on the air. And then what we did was I was doing the virtual with one of their parents, Nancy Yin Shipley's a wonderful doctor here in the community, orthopedic surgeon. She was my MC, and we were in the studio back at the AV department. But then what we did was we designated one of the folks that we knew from the community, Corrine, who had emceed the show with me in the studio 2 years ago or a year ago. She went to Nebulous and she became our on-site reporter. And so what we wanted to do was we created an environment for people to gather. They didn't have to buy a ticket. So it's very inclusive, right? Key word right now, inclusivity, right? You didn't have to buy a ticket. The place was welcoming a family, so you didn't have to have a babysitter. If you wanted to bring your kids, you could, right? Very inclusive. Come, no food minimum, no ticket. Buy a beer if you want. It's totally comfortable, right? And then we had Corrine there, and we had her set up on a separate device, and she was our on-site reporter, okay? And so during the show in the studio, we broke away to Nebulous Tap Room, which is the name of the facility, several times, 3 times, in fact, and kind of brought them into the show. And so it allowed us to encourage and to grow the engagement with our audience, right? So I took the liberty of clipping the show, and I wanted to show you, I want to run a quick, I'm going to show you those segments that we did on the remote. I called it a remote highlight. And let's just take a look. Speaking of community, I understand there's a little party, a group of parents who have gathered at the Nebulous Tap Room in the Beaverton Town Square to watch and celebrate tonight's Shiwan Gala. Let's check in with our good friend Corrine, who is our on-the-scene reporter for tonight, and let's go out to Nebulous. Corrine, you're packing them in.
Hey, yes, we are. We are having a great time over here, Patrick.
That is, everybody's got the bid. We've got us up on the big screen. We're going to have a lot of fun. Let's raise a lot of money for the Hope community.
Yes, remember, bid high and bid often.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for everybody to be in there tonight. That's awesome. What a great atmosphere. Can't wait to see some terrific bids and donations come out of Nebulous Tap Room tonight. Before we do, I want to check in with our buddies over at Nebulous. It looks to me like the crowd is growing. You there, Corrine?
We're here.
Hey, you've got a house full there at Nebulous Tap Room, huh? Look at all these people. Huh?
Yes, we are having so much fun.
It is the next best thing to being in person is to have the watch party at Nebulous Tap Room. Are you guys ready to bid in the live auction?
We are ready to bid. You guys ready to bid?
Oh, yeah.
Woo!
Let's do it. Let's get it done. Thanks for being there, everybody. Let's bid high and bid often. Hey, Corrine, how are we doing?
Hey, we're doing great. Lots of high energy here, lots of bidders. We're having fun.
Absolutely. Hey, did I hear Jessica's in the room over there? Is that right, Jessica Bourbon?
She is. She sure is right behind me.
Yeah, absolutely. We tell her we're trying to sell that house. It's gorgeous. We're at $3,000 with Gillis right now. So make sure people are bidding high and bidding often. And Nancy and I want to make sure you save us a cold beer. We're coming to Nebulous Tap Room right after tonight.
Cheers. We'll be waiting for you.
Bid high and bid often, folks. Hey, we're at $3,000. So, aside from the auctioneer and his lack of talent, I thought it was a really, really cool concept. I loved it. Just to put it in perspective, they ended up with 35 to 40 people. They told me joining them there that night. The tap room was ecstatic. We were able to share those remote shots with because of the technology. And what was amazing is it didn't cost us anything, right? It didn't cost Hope Chinese Charter School anything. If anything, it made them money because people were engaged and people were having fun. The way we did that, just from a technical standpoint, and I'm definitely not a technical guy, but I would tell you first and foremost, I've said it already a few times, call the AV department because they did it. It was awesome, right? But we were at the AV department in their studio, and what we did was we provided Corrine with a Zoom link, and we brought her into the studio on Zoom, and then the guys in the control room did their magic and put her picture in picture with me on the show, on the live stream that was going out over Octria and YouTube and Vimeo, multiple platforms. But it was really great, and I think that we didn't spend any extra money. It was easy to do, and if I was to do it again, I think I might, which I will. But I think that if you're nervous about the tech, whoever's providing your AV should be able to designate a person. Cost you a little bit of money, but to have someone that's on site, that's kind of the technical director, as my buddy John Hasty at the AV department likes to call himself, a technical director who is paying attention and understands all those things. As smooth as that looked, it was really smooth. I was shocked. Corrine was awesome. We would text her when we were getting ready to go to her, and then the Zoom was left open the entire show. And all she had to do was go down and sit next to the computer and show it around and whatnot. And she was just using her laptop and a webcam, and it was absolutely awesome. We got great feedback on it. So I encourage you folks, hey, think about, let's, like I said earlier, they've taken our Etch-a-Sketch and shooken it up and down. It's blank, and there are no rules, right? Let's create things that engage folks and help them to help us raise more money for your nonprofit organization. So definitely think about, as we're moving into this next evolution of what we've been through the last 2 years. If you've already booked that virtual event, or you've booked a smaller venue and you want to expand, I think that this has incredible potential, because I think, you take it a step further. I know many schools and nonprofits do, at least in our area here, do what they call restaurant nights, right? Where a local restaurant will be so kind as to designate an evening as nonprofit night for that group, and they give back a percentage of their proceeds from that night to that nonprofit. So I would, first place I would look is think about those groups that have those restaurant nights, and think about what venue would be great and would be easy for your community to get to. And if maybe the restaurant's willing to have those folks come and have their dinner or have snacks and have beverages, whatever it is, right? And maybe they want to kick back some proceeds to the nonprofit and participate. I think there's really a lot of opportunity in this format. And the nice thing is there's no hurt feelings, right? Nobody had to clean their home. Nobody had to wine spilled on their carpet. Nobody was offended they didn't get invited to a special home because a home can only hold so many people. Any of that stuff, it's all out the window, right? And it was funny being in a public place. Mariana was sharing with me because, as I said in that last segment, that Nancy and I were headed there right after the show, and we did. And we were one of the last to leave, of course. But what was interesting to me is Mariana made a comment. She goes, we had a person who came to our tap room tonight who's a fairly regular person, but has no affiliation with the school, has no affiliation with the fundraiser that night. And they saw what was going on, and they got online and they made a donation and they bid on a couple of packages, right? So, wow, who knows where that goes? Okay. There's a lot of opportunity out there, folks. They took our Etch-a-Sketch, they shook it up and down. It's your turn to start turning the knobs and make it look like you wanted to make it, right? Hopefully we'll give you some ideas every week here on Fundraising BIDness Talk. We're here noon every week, noon on the West Coast, and just talking about what's going on, what's happening. I couldn't have planned today's talk 2 weeks ago, because it's all happened in the last 10 days and even this morning, right? So love having everybody join us. If you missed an episode, there's 51 of them. This is episode 52. So go to fundraisingbidnesstalk.com. You can catch all 52 episodes. There's some great information there to help you raise more money for your organization. Hey, I want to remind you, every bid is raising money for your cause, and it does not matter where you start the bidding. It's all about where you finish. Folks, thanks so much for joining us today. Tim, loved having you on the show with us, and all of our friends around the country. Be sure to catch the replays. Until next week, folks, have a great day. I'm Patrick. Goodbye.